The company name is Dermot, Foley Landscape Architects, and it was founded in 2001. And essentially we design landscapes and open space from small private gardens right up to large public realm schemes for a very wide range of clients. So we design and oversee the construction of those projects. The main target audience would be, I suppose, anybody who's involved in the policy around good public realm and also the delivery of it. So we work for local authorities, government agencies, private individuals, and I suppose importantly in Ireland, commercial operators, developers, because the private sector delivers a lot of public realm. So for a lot of those clients, I suppose we think we can bring innovation to the design process. It's essentially to do with the creative reuse of vacant resources in a city, but specifically my interest was, I suppose as a landscape architect, my interest was in vacant sites itself. Now, obviously our research partners have developed that into vacant sites and buildings, or empty buildings, or semi-vacant buildings. So I suppose in the early couple of years of the research, I particularly was involved in just trying to do a literature review, also working with the University of Stuttgart in terms of combining a questionnaire that they had for the tourist cities to try to understand what systems each city had in place for resilience generally, resilience behaviour, sustainable planning, that kind of stuff, but also particularly in relation to the reuse of vacant sites, whether even they were mapping them in the first place. And some cities were aware of what was going on, then others weren't. So I suppose together with the University of Stuttgart, we put together a fair amount of background information as to the general literature review, I suppose the general philosophy around the subject, but also very specific details as to what was actually happening in each of the 11 tourist cities. Currently, I'm liaising with an artist facilitator on one of the demo sites in Pallestown in Dublin. And in fact, this artist, Glenn Loughran, was actually involved also in one of the sites that I suppose inspired us to get involved and organise tours at the start. So that was the Bridgefoot Street site in Dublin, in the city centre. So at the moment I'm liaising with Glenn to make sure that I suppose what he's doing on the Pallestown site accords with the principles and the desires and the direction we want to go with in tourists for Dublin City Council. Going back, I suppose I could say I saw the project at the very early stages, and at the time as a practitioner I was interested in Dublin and things that were happening in Dublin after the recession, and so I also teach part-time in UCD as well, so I was able to sort of, I suppose, combine with the partners in UCD and also with at the Guinness Enterprise Centre with Dublin Business Innovation. I knew the person who was facilitating, I suppose, as a third party on Bridgefoot Street, and that was a vacant site which was owned by Dublin City Council, and Maureen O'Curran at the time, who was actually, I suppose, activating community involvement there and acting as a go-between between the community and the city. She had succeeded to a certain extent, and she was, I suppose, explaining to me at the time, this is back in 2010, that a lot of people had come to her to ask for advice and to understand how she had succeeded, you know, and she had achieved certain things that they had achieved. And I suppose she was frustrated by the fact that a lot of people in Dublin were trying to do things and failing, and she couldn't really teach them. So we started talking about the idea of, you know, how do you actually share this information, and could you actually get it to work on another site? And then at the same time, I suppose it was coincidental in many ways. I was invited to the Guinness Enterprise Centre by Siobhan, by a team that Siobhan was involved in, to help small businesses understand how they could potentially access funding, and my stream was actually in the environment stream of that particular call at the time in Europe. With the connection with UCD as well, that kind of helped us to get something going. I suppose it just spiralled from there. We've a small business, 4 to 8 people based in Dublin, but it can be very intensive and we actually produce a lot of output. But what I'm looking for, I suppose, is, and tourists is really helping actually, and I'll come back to an example, one of the projects that we've got recently. I suppose I'm looking to develop that evidence-based background, because the design process is quite subjective, or can be seen to be subjective. And clients, I think, are more sophisticated now. They're looking more and more for evidence-based design. It's not enough just to talk about something, you have to actually prove that it is the case and then, you know, go forward and deliver it. So, I mean, just one example of that, based on the UEL research into brown roof habitat creation and so on, We put forward a presentation to the University of Kingston a couple of years ago with a firm of architects and actually won a project for their campus, which was based on a modification of some of the UEL work. So we're bringing their brown roof technology down actually into very intensively used public realm areas, into public landscapes. And so we're going through the planning process on that project now, but that's an example of, I suppose, how we had developed some extra set of skills, I think, which we can attract partners and attract clients with. And it's UK based, maybe it'll be further afield in the future.